Welcome to the Personal Development Mastery Podcast. I'm 𝗘𝗵𝗃 and my mission is to inspire you to rise up, grow, stand out, and take action towards the next level of your life. I interview leaders, influencers, entrepreneurs, authors, exceptional people who can and will inspire you to improve your life. Tune in for 2 episodes each week and make sure you subscribe to the podcast to get the episodes as soon as they are released. This is the second half of the conversation with Elpida. Listen to the previous episode, number 90, for the first part. Elpida, shall we talk about choices? You mentioned it earlier, and you say that it's the biggest distinction that you've had in your own journey and working with others, coaching others. So do you want to explain that to me? First of all, when you say choices or lack of choices, what is it that you mean? How is that made a big distinction for you? Let's start from there.
Choices is such, or can be, such a huge topic because it applies to everything in our lives. And I think the biggest distinction is that we have choices. That everything is a choice. Even when we think we don't have a choice, we have choices. Mm-hmm. We may not have the choices that we want, and very often we focus on what we can't have. And there has been a heck of a lot of that this year. People focusing on what they cannot do. And that can really, that does something to you. Mm-hmm. If you're not happy where you are and you feel you absolutely cannot do anything about it, it does something to you. And I know that because I've been to that place a number of times in my life. And some people meet their needs this way. And we can talk about Tony Robbins and the 6 human needs another time, but some people meet their needs this way, and by feeling helpless, by staying in the pain. And that's a different topic. Mm-hmm. But if you are not happy with that, realizing that you have choices. And, after a certain point in our lives, when we stop being in diapers and maybe we graduate from school, you got to put your big person pants on and realize, this is life. Mm-hmm. It's not always going to be rainbows and sprinkles. And sometimes you have choices that may not be your first or second choice, but that's life. And so how can you work with what you have? And none of us is immune to that. And I'm not immune to that. The first couple of months of the pandemic, as choices kept being removed from my life, I was not a happy camper. And then I said, okay, what can I do? What options are available to me? And that's when the shift happens. Mm-hmm. And it's you can take any of these sort of, I wouldn't even call them advice, concepts, in a vacuum. But for me, it's a progression, because I've worked very hard the last 8 or 9 years to be able to be happy most of the time. Mm-hmm. And I've worked hard in really asking myself on the toughest moments, where's the blessing in this? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's not an easy question. It's an easy question when you're getting married. Where's the blessing in this? It's an easy question when you have a child, or when you get a puppy, or when you're out celebrating a birthday with friends. It's not an easy question when you lose your father. And that's when I started adopting it, and it started becoming part of my life. Because my brain said, what do you mean what's the blessing in this? You just lost your father. And I said, no, where's the blessing in this? And the beauty about our brain is whatever question you ask it, and there's a choice in the question, See what I did there? There's a choice in the question. Whatever question you ask your brain, it's going to come up with answers. If you ask your brain, why am I alone? It says, sit back, let me tell you why. Let me tell you exactly what's wrong with you. And, 5 days later, it's still going. But if you ask yourself, where's the blessing in this? Like if I ask myself, why did my father have to die? Oh my God, massive pain. In any way you can answer that. If I ask myself, where's the blessing in this? I start coming up with answers like, an amazing life, a legacy of an extraordinary man came to its natural end, and the legacy he leaves behind. And then my question was, how can I honor his legacy? And there were some powerful questions and answers there. But choice is in everything you do. You just don't realize it. And I'm not saying invest your time in making cautious choices every day of your life, every moment of your life. But there is a huge benefit and a blessing in realizing that what you're doing was a result because at some point you made a choice. Anything by setting up your alarm in the morning or choosing to snooze, your morning routine or rituals, what you eat, how you invest, spend, waste your time, what you focus on, what you tell yourself about yourself, what you choose to see in others, what you choose to speak about others. And very important, what you choose to expose yourself to in terms of content. You spend 3 hours a day on Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and Twitter and God knows what else is out there these days. I stopped watching the news years ago. I read headlines and I'm not even crazy about the headlines I'm reading these days because I know I can see that the way they report the facts it already has some kind of a judgment or is designed to make me have a reaction. I know enough about what's going on through the world, so I don't live in La La Land, but I don't watch the news. Because no judgment necessarily, but when you have news channels that their only objective is to report news 24/7, like, come on, there's not enough stuff. And when you have an industry that lives by the motto, if it bleeds, it leads, then there's a reason why we don't hear about people doing good in the world, about people being neighborly and helping each other. What you allow in your brain and in your mind and in your psyche and in your soul and in your heart really is a choice and impacts who you are and who you're becoming as a human being. And so once you realize that, you can dream of a different person you want to be and then slowly make different choices. It's as simple as that.
Elpida, I have a question that comes up from what you say. I completely get it, but the thing is that for many people, if not for most, these choices are not even aware that they are making choices because they happen automatically over long periods of time. So they're not even aware that they have a choice. So if you were to advise someone that is listening to this and say, oh, I hadn't thought of it in such a way, and you were to give him some kind of an action or a step to take it forward or further, what would you say?
Well, first of all, I would say that's where I come in with my coaching. And literally that's where I come in. I'm not this super duper fabulous guru that can wave a magic wand and make magic happen in people's lives. I hold up a mirror, and I've been doing that long enough to know and and appreciate and identify language patterns, behavior patterns, and then very gently ask a question that brings awareness for the person. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that in the sense that I start by not judging the person and only wanting what's best for them. And I'm like, have you noticed that? Could that be linked to that, what you're feeling? Let's do something about it. But if someone doesn't want to work with a coach, or someone cannot afford a coach, or doesn't have a coach and doesn't believe in coaching, for me, what I've learned to trust is, for lack of a better word, a gut feeling. Mm-hmm. And I think in today's age, with all the physical stimuli, we forget that we can tap into this energy that is not concrete, something you can touch and feel, but you can feel it in your heart, you can feel it in your gut. And that I've learned to trust. So if something is not feeling right, if there's an unrest, I dig until I find answers. You know, and it anything from making a decision about who to hang out with, or who to talk to, or a project I'm working on, some of the choices I'm making in my life. I go back to choices, which makes it deliberate. But once you start realizing, and I think the foundation is, you have to believe that you have choices, and that where you are today is the result of choices. Because that changes your mindset from a learned helplessness to being at the driver's seat. And then the rest of it is, okay, if I'm not happy with my body, what are the choices I'm making every day that could be contributing to that? And once you identify a choice in one area of your life, you can identify another choice. Like, if I have 3 cookies with my midday coffee, and I've always had 3 cookies with my midday coffee, so it's no longer a choice, it's part of my habit. Once you realize that that is a choice, can I have 2 cookies instead? Can I skip half the sugar I'm putting in my coffee? There are people that are like gung-ho, I'm going to change my life tomorrow, 100%, boom, they get it done. God bless them. I'm not like that. I'm all about what Tony Robbins calls the 2mm shift. And if you stack those over the course of a year, over the course of your life, you can have a completely different trajectory and end up in a completely different place than where you are today. And I've applied that in my life. And I know it works, because I would never ask someone to do something that I haven't done myself. I would never ask someone to walk a path that I haven't walked myself. And I'm so passionate about choices because over the last, it's been almost 2 years now, I made some very deliberate, different choices about my life and my health. And last year I was able to release 40 pounds. Whereas before I had a belief that I can't lose weight. I've been told I am curvy because I'm Mediterranean. I should just accept it. I've been told that I'm big boned. You know, I've been told that that's just the way it is. And I've accepted it. I can't lose weight. And, you know, as I start peeling the layers of what I believe, I'm like, hold on. There are people who drop weight like that. What do you mean I can't lose weight? So once you change the belief, you're like, okay, what do I need to do? What choices do I need to do? And it started with little choices every day that I knew I wanted to make part of a different lifestyle. Most people I hear have been putting on weight in the pandemic. I have not. Because I make different choices every day in my life, and I have a different lifestyle that is sustainable, which is why I like those 2mm shifts, a choice at a time. Choice a day, choice a week. Next week, add a little bit more, add a little bit more. It adds up.
Absolutely. And, you know, I'll I'll make a comment with what you said about the choices, which is borrowed from the Stoic philosophers of ancient Greece and Rome. And our choice, if you really think about it, is the only thing, the one thing that we are completely in control of. We have no control about anything else in our life, not even our body or nothing at all, but our choice to use our reason to respond in any given situation or stimulus or whatever it is, one way or the other. And that is always ours, no matter what happens, no matter if the world is coming to an end, we do have the choice. So it's a topic that could be a little bit weird for some people who are not very familiar with it, but I think it's important to realize that what you will think, what you will choose is always up to you, no matter what the external circumstances might be. And the questions that you said, I love the questions that you said earlier, to ask first of all, what if there is another option, and then once there is that possibility, then how will give you answers. And if you can't figure it out, who can give you answers?
And there's talking about choices. I want to raise it up a level, because talking about choices and the choices we have is fine and dandy. And some people say, well, I don't want to make a different choice. Choices have consequences. The choices we make every day have consequences. And so for me, that was a huge realization, and that's something that I often tell people. Choices have consequences. If you choose not to change, that has a consequence. Like, that drives accountability through the roof. Don't tell me you can't lose weight because you're making specific choices. And first I had to tell that to myself. Choices have consequences. And so it is very important when you're making deliberate choices to be ready to accept the consequences. That's what adulthood is about. And it's not very common. There are people who just refuse it and say, no, I still want to be able to drink and eat like I was in my 20s, and I don't want to put in 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds. You look, and we're talking about weight because that's my biggest example these days, because of the transformation that I went through, something that 3 years ago, I would have not thought it was possible. Like, even now I tell it, I'm like, 40 freaking pounds. Like, I would have never, it just was, that's the way that I've carried on my entire adult life. But choices have consequences. Again, going back to who you choose to spend time with has consequences. There are always trade-offs. Do you choose to spend time with the people that you've always spent time with, although you realize that their approach to life, the conversations you're having are really not helping you grow and move forward? That has a consequence. Or do you choose to elegantly bless them out of your life so you can attract a different peer group that will support you in your next phase of your life? Choices have consequences. And for me, that was very sobering. And for a lot of people, it's a sobering concept. And that's a very deliberate word that I'm using, because I know that sometimes the word consequences has more of a negative connotation than a positive. Because I could say choices bring results. For me, as we were talking about connotations earlier in the language, for me, that's a little bit of a blah statement. But consequences makes me sober up and say, okay, what is my choice on every single moment?
And we also must consider the consequences in the depth of time, because the consequences of a choice could be very small immediately or the next day, but the same choice over a period of time compounds, and it can compound completely against you. So that you gave that example about the 3 cookies. So if you eat 3 cookies today, you won't gain weight tomorrow. And if you do that again tomorrow, you won't gain weight. But do that over 10 years and see what happens. So and it is something I believe very important to realize that the consequences are not immediate. And the longer we carry on with a choice that is not to our benefit or not serving us, it's going to intensify, amplify in the future. So, and of course that can work for us as well. If we make the right choices, if we go to the gym, I'm not going to be fit tomorrow, but if I keep on going, in a period of time, I will see the results. So,
Yeah.
Elpida, there is one other thing I wanted to ask, and then I will wrap things up. And it is something that is I personally found very fascinating about you, because you say you've been to over 40 countries in the world. Even though it was for business, you still have been. So can you share a bit of that experience of, I think I read somewhere the phrase world citizen, which I like. I don't know if it's going to be feasible from now on with the travel restrictions, but can you share a bit of that experience or any key learnings that this has given you?
Yeah. I credit my desire to travel. I credit my parents for that. My father definitely enjoyed traveling, and my mother did too. My mother, when she was in her early 30s, moved to Moscow to work for the Greek embassy there. And we're talking Iron Curtain, Moscow. For a young woman in the 1960s, and you probably understand what the environment and the culture was about. Like, you probably were expected by then to have a husband and a couple of kids, not move on your own to communist Moscow. So there's something there that probably has been passed on in the genes. But I've always felt that I wanted to travel. I found it very exciting, very appealing. And my graduate degree was in international management. So there was an understanding that I would apply business concepts with the added complexity of doing business in another country. And back then I thought I would do that in Europe, and life brought me to Puerto Rico, working for an international, for a big American company with international presence. And out of Puerto Rico, they manage the Caribbean, Central and South America. So I spent 10 years traveling about 60-70% of the time. And I was younger, and that was exactly the moment in my life to do that. No commitment, so I was able to just live out of a suitcase. And there's a movie with George Clooney, I think it's called Up in the Air, right? That he was a frequent traveler, and some of the things in that movie I completely related to, like how reaching a whatever status in an airline was important, and me and my colleagues were comparing how many miles we each had each year, and who made platinum first and who made executive platinum, and priding in knowing the concierge in every hotel in every country. It was a different time. That was 20 years ago. The things that are important to me now have clearly changed, but the experiences stay. Because although a lot of those trips, the majority were for business, I was able to appreciate people coming from different cultures.
Yeah.
And have an open mind of how different people live their lives, what is important to them, their food, their music, visit some monuments, bring back some little things that remind me of those trips.
Yeah.
I think I still have a list of places that I want to travel, and I want to pick up traveling for recreational purposes, starting next year or the year after that. Not as eager to boast about a number anymore, but more about experiences. Let's say less quantity, more quality.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm with you on that. Absolutely. Elpida, it's been a really fascinating conversation with you, and we went through all sorts of different routes. I would like to also ask you some quick fire questions, which I always ask my guests. So you don't have
fire
to answer.
Away.
You don't have to answer in one word, but it's just some questions that I always find intriguing to see differences and similarities that different people give me. So the first one is, what does the term personal development mean to you?
Lifelong journey.
Okay, that's quick fire, all right?
That's quick fire.
That's fine, sure. And let's say you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self, and you could give her one piece of advice. What would that be?
Life is happening for you, not to you.
As someone who we know says.
Yeah.
Tell me, if you had a magic wand and you could wave it and change something in the world as it is today, what would you change?
Help people appreciate each other more.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think we focus too much. I think we live in a culture that focuses on what's wrong, what's missing, what's out of our control. Who can we blame? We're focusing on what divides us. And if in every interaction with every human being, especially the ones that trigger us, we asked ourselves the question, what are 3 things I can appreciate about this person right now? Full stop. And then move on. Or if you don't want to move on, tell them one of the things that you appreciate about them. And I'm not just repeating stuff I've learned and heard. I've done that. I'm the president of the board of my homeowners association. I've been doing that for 11 years. I've been the president for 10. That's not a position that always makes me very popular. I've had people scream at me. I have people call me names, and reacting is very easy. It's what we do this, no, you did this, you did that. No, look at you. Well, you do this. And with the people that were more vocal about their dislike about me, I forced myself to say, what are 3 things I can appreciate about this person right now? I don't have to love them. I don't have to be lifelong friends with them. And let me tell you, changing the energy on my part changes the interaction. So yeah, if I had a magic wand, I would help people appreciate each other more, and not just those that they like.
Thank you. I think that this is a complete life changer. If forcing, the way you said it, forcing yourself to find 3 things, or to answer about 3 things that you can appreciate, it would change the dynamic in every relationship, really. And not even just the adverse relationship, even Is there anything that you were hoping that we would discuss about today and we completely missed it?
I mean, I could say yes and no, right?
That's why I'm asking.
We can talk another time about my dogs and agility and all the lessons that I bring home to life from that, because there's so many lessons as you're trying to develop a trust with an animal, that it will follow you around off leash and do things that are fun. And when you guys fail as a team, it's always the human's fault. It's never the dog's fault. So learning to be accountable for your actions and your choices, because choices have consequences. And that's that. There's more to come. I'm just not going to give everything away.
Sure. But I want you to give this away, though. Emerging from this conversation that we had, if you were to give to the listener one actionable item, something that they can implement so that they can make maybe a 2 millimeter shift, as you were saying earlier in their life, what would you tell them?
Well, just think, there's another thing we didn't talk about. I would tell them, start every day with gratitude. And if that doesn't work, increase the gratitude. I start every day. I have a gratitude practice that I do when I jog with my dogs in the morning. Then after my breakfast, I write down 10 things I'm grateful about and why. I repeat my gratitude practice when I walk my dogs in the afternoon. It's a way of life. Because the thing is that where focus goes, energy flows. So the more things you find to be grateful for, and you can find things to be grateful in any circumstance, even if it's just the air that you breathe. The more things you find to be grateful for, the more things you will have to be grateful for.
Absolutely. And, the reason that I asked you this question is that it's part of what I want to do with this podcast. It's not about, people having conversations. It can be as intriguing as it can, which is great. But for me, what I want to really give to the listener is some bit of action, some bit of a deed, something that they can implement really to improve their life. Otherwise, you can listen. There is so much information out there. There is, again, I will quote Tony, who said that we how did he say that there is a, I don't remember, and I don't want to mess the quote up, but he was saying that we drown in knowledge, but we starve in wisdom. So there is a distinction between, there is all the knowledge in the world, it's out there, but to distill that and do something with it, I think that is the very important thing.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how can people connect with you and find out more about you and what you do?
People can find me on Facebook. Very simple, Elpida Frantzeskarou. Given my unique last name, I don't think that there is a lot more. It's my personal page. I accept friend requests, especially if people send me a message and they tell me who they are and why they want to connect. If someone wants to have a conversation, they can private message me. I try to, again, talking about choices, I try to post something motivational, inspiring, something that resonates with me a couple of times a week. So these days, my page is more about where my mind is at and how I can support others, and less about what's going on in the world, other than we can make that work for us.
That's brilliant. Thank you again very much for your time and the conversation, and some amazing pieces of value that I believe that you shared. I want to wish you all the very best with your life, with your career, with your progression. I don't know what your plans are about the Tony Robbins in the future. But all the very best with that. Any parting words?
Just deep gratitude and appreciation for inviting me. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I appreciate the questions you're asking. And to you and anybody who's listening, have an amazing 2021. Make the most of it. Choose carefully your choices and have an extraordinary life. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and rate Personal Development Mastery on Apple Podcasts, and also share this episode with someone who you think will benefit from it. If you want to become part of an exclusive community, gain access to unique content, and at the same time support this podcast, then become my patron. The link is in the show notes, or you can type bit.ly/pdmpat. If you want to know more about what I do and how I can help you, join my Facebook group Personal Development Mastery. Again, the link is in the show notes, or you can simply type bit.ly/pdmgroup. And until next time, stand out, don't fit in.